So, there's a general election coming up next week.
You're joking.
I live in a constituency that's been a Labour stronghold since 1992, with a little gap in the middle during the, actually, let's forget about that. Anyway, it's going to be Labour again here, probably, so I thought the little red box would be a better way to change the record than the ballot box. It's time to discuss the election. Whether you take the rest of this in is up to you, but I hope it leaves you either in deep thought or guffawing convulsion.
Onward, of course you must.
Another one?
However you feel, I don't think there's much doubt that the past 14 years of Conservative government have absolutely savaged our infrastructure, our hospitals, and our education system. It wasn't just lettuce ladies' horrifying hot takes that sent the financial sector into the economic equivalent of a tactical chunder. It's the long-standing chronic underfunding and mismanagement of public services in this country that have left people so destitute, all in pursuit of helping a minority of folks in this country get on. I'd genuinely love to meet someone who voted Conservative in 2010, 2015, 2017 and 2019 and is now considering voting Labour or Lib Dem, to ask them what exactly had to change before they recognised that throttling the public sector like an unwanted pussycat was a bad idea. Nevertheless, I'm sure we can all see in that respect why public opinion has shifted to the extent that it has. The sunshine and roses that Boris Johnson was drinking up on his illegal party patio have definitely all gone in now. We're left with the grim reality that we're a chuffing clod of dirt on the edge of the Atlantic, and we're stuck here, doomed to be slowly eating spam until we die. Weirdly, Farage, Sunak and Starmer all seem to be fond of this spam shoveling mentality, covering themselves in Union Jacks and pretending to like the things that made us great 80 years ago while inexplicably denying the things that make us great now. Maybe that's the price to pay for electability. Maybe that's where Joe Public's sense of self settles. Maybe it's me who's out of touch. No, it's the British who are wrong. Look, you can vote how you like in this election. If you've got Starmer in your blinkers just like Blair in 97, I can't change your mind. And honestly, it isn't worth it. If you're genuinely enthusiastic for this man, then fine. Even though the evidence suggests you're much more likely to be choosing him begrudgingly. But the risk is more about how you'll feel 5 years down the line. Remember that bit of electoral history I glossed over at the beginning? That's when the Liberal Democrats snatched my constituency from New Labour during the doldrums of Blairism. People there saw through the bluster. You see, when you stand for nothing, you can't count on anyone. The political functionaries who, beyond begrudging support for Starmer, actually seem to like him, haven't thought especially far ahead. Where's the vision for 2029? More of the same managed decline? That's not exactly sunshine and roses, and it's probably not going to win again. But regardless of how you vote in this election, I think it shows up, more than any election in recent times, just how minor the ballot box is in affecting change. Weirdly, it's some of the politicians that hammer this point home the best. Just check out this quote from Scottish National Party MP and overall pasty king, Stephen Flynn.
There's £18 billion worth of cuts baked in, which neither the Labour Party nor the Conservative Party are being honest about.
So, whichever of the two warring parties end up in government after this election, they're both denying the real economic damage that the past 14 years of austerity have done to this country. They don't wish to address the structural change that's required, because the vested interest that these politicians have to submit to, the billionaires that have shifted their stacks of cash from Sunak to Starmer, don't want to see that change come into effect. Little Blighty, bastion of high finance and low pleasures, simply doesn't have the checks on bad behaviour that they do on the continent. If anything, Britain endorses it. It endorses inequality. It endorses oppression. Not in the airy-fairy woke sense, in the sense of tents on every street corner, woefully misjudged police priorities, the landlord and the CEO over the precarious tenant and the wage slave. And you're telling me, in this economy, we have to accept that's the way this country is run? That it will never change? That we had our chance to say we wanted something else, and we spunked it up the wall for a joker and a thief? And now we have to accept a government that's barely any different? That's what tells me the ballot box isn't going to be the way that things get any better. In this election, even Ed Miliband's takes are beyond contention. Workers' rights are a foregone conclusion. The water's just dirty now. The houses are just mouldy. The trains are just late. We have to accept less. That honestly makes me sick, almost as much as the tap water. The idea that we have to acquiesce. That we have to accept that it's okay to get into bed with a con man like Rupert Murdoch and start parroting Tory attack lines on immigration without acknowledging the real reasons why we have a housing crisis or a catastrophe in A&E. To accept that it's okay to persist with the establishment consensus on tax and spend during an ongoing cost of living crisis.
80 billion additional debt would just absolutely crash our economy.
To accept that it's okay to ditch the bare minimum of climate commitments we need not to burn to death, even if ditching them will cost us more in the long run. Look, if all the people who've hopefully turned over by now, who blithely suggest that we have to accept the lesser of two evils in an election where something evil is almost guaranteed to win, if all of those people actually looked at themselves and thought about what they believe in, and stood up for what they believe in, and read this book, or maybe this book, and pushed for change in their workplace, in their friendship group, in the street, that'd affect umpteen times more change than telling us we have to vote for someone who doesn't speak for what we believe in. We should know well enough by now that voting for either of these political parties in this general election is not going to be the deciding factor for change in this country. Whether it's junior doctors, railway workers, or even academics, we should know well enough by now that we only get the change we need when we stand up for it. When we strike, when we protest en masse, when we say no with even a modicum of force. The history books tell a beautiful story, so often forgotten, of the people of this country, downtrodden, dirty, and sick of chuffing spam, demanding change from the powers that be, and winning. Winning women's suffrage, the working week, equality in the eyes of the law. Much as there might be efforts to erode these rights, they stand up so much better than the institutions built on political will alone. We should know well enough by now that it's the will of the people that brings the change, not the will of one man, not the will of one sociopathic pencil pusher with no ideas. We'll back Mick Lynch, Sharon Graham, or Dave Ward and the millions of workers they represent 1,000 times over before we even think about Keir Starmer or any of his curmudgeonly coterie of cretins without a semblance of community power behind them. And that's what I'll think about when I flash my stupid fudging ID and take my barely relevant ballot paper. This year, 2024, the year when things didn't really change for the better.
So we've got to put them under a lot of pressure about every single angle that they're being very quiet about, and the trade union movement has got to be at the core of that and mobilise activist groups, especially people under 40.